In this example, we have this data that give the salvage value at the beginning here and at the end of the year. Also, it gives you the operating cost, maintenance cost, any cost that the machine has for the corresponding year. Based on this data that you have, calculate the column for marginal cost. So with MAR of 15%, add this column here, marginal cost, and fill out this part. And it's the beginning of a bigger example. It is just the first step. Stop the video and do the calculations. Here is the answer, and hopefully you have get the same numbers on your calculations. Let's check the details of the calculations in an Excel file. So here for year 1, marginal cost is 16,000, year 2 14, 13, and like that. And when we are checking the marginal cost for this case, from year 1 to 2 decreasing, makes sense. Year 2 to 3 decreasing, but year 3 to 4 and year 4 to 5, they are increasing. Here is the details for calculation. Marginal cost equals the 233. So the cost for year 1, that makes sense because it is the direct cost we have for that year plus the interest on the salvage value at the beginning of the year. So here we have 15% times the salvage value at the beginning of the term period, and finally the loss in the salvage value between the beginning and end of the period. The same calculations goes for the other ones, and these are the results. And here you can see the formula that you should apply over there. Now you are familiar with the details of calculating all this data, and it is not like the previous example that we did, because in the previous example, marginal costs from the beginning, they were rising. So it was easier to handle because for deciding for replacement or not, you just need to compare marginal cost with the EUAC of the challenger, the minimum one. But here, since marginal cost is not rising, in fact, it is decreasing, the situation is different, and we need to go for technique 2, in which you need to calculate EUAC of the defender, minimum EUAC. So here 16,000 goes 14,000, so you see it is decreasing, and we need to use technique 2. So what we need to do now, we need to calculate minimum EUAC for defender. For calculating minimum EUAC for defender, we need to calculate EUAC for year 1, for year 2, for year 3, 4, 5, and see which one is the minimum. Okay, so that's what you need to do in the next step. calculation of EUAC for each of these years. If you know how to do it, good luck. Go ahead, and that's great that now at this stage you are at this level of fluency with doing all this formula. But if you are still a little bit not sure what is the next step to do, let's break it down into these steps. When you want to calculate EUAC, you have several parts you need to take care of. You have the costs that happen that you need to convert them to EUAC, and also you have the salvage values that you need to convert to EUAC. If I want to show you in a better way, for example, for the costs, let me show you what happens. For example, for year 4. Let's go for year 3. For year 3, we have these costs. 12,000 at year 1, 10,000 at year 2, and 9,800 at year 3. Just for example, there are some policies or anything that if you keep your machine, the company that sold you the machine provide you with some specific compensations, discount that make the cost until year 3 decreasing, because they want to encourage you for keeping the car or any type of thing. And that's the reason whenever I'm talking about a rule situation in this field, I usually emphasize on the word usually. I usually emphasize on the word most, because now in this case you see the costs are decreasing. That is not the usual case. Okay, so as you can see, we have these costs during these 3 years for year 3. What you are supposed to do, you need to convert these costs that are happening over 3 years, you need to convert them into equivalent uniform annual cost. Because we want to do the comparison, because of all the things we have discussed from the beginning of this course. So when you are about to calculate the EUAC, it is asking you to convert this changing 12,000, 10,000, 9,000 that happens over year 1, 2, 3 into equivalent uniform ones. So since we want to do everything step by step, as the next step in doing this example, just go and calculate equivalent uniform annual costs for costs. Stop the video and take your time. You see, now we are going through the details of calculations in this example very patiently, so you can connect yourself with every details that we are discussing here. Stop the video and good luck with calculation of EUAC for costs. I'm back here to give you another hint, just in case you are still not sure what to do. According to this cash flow diagram you see here, 12, 10, 9, to calculate the EUAC, we still need some sort of processing. Because the cash flow, for example, for year 3 is 12,10,9. So what is that processing that you need to do? That we have already discussed this type of thing, but again, I'm here to give you the hint. When you have this 3 cash flow, you need to first, my suggestion, you may have come up with something else, and if you have finished calculation of EUAC on cost, kudos to you and very good. But if I want to suggest to you an easy way to calculate the present value for these cash flows that are different, you see there is no order in them about the steps, amount, or anything. Calculate the present worth, present value of these 3 things. So you get the present value here, okay? For example, here you get the present value. You get the present value, and when you have the present value, go with PMT and put the rate, present value, and get the PMT of this PV. I hope it helps, and now stop the video and start working on calculation of present value of the costs for each year that you see in this table. Good luck. Here is the answer to the challenge. Calculation of the present value of the costs, and here you can see them. And see, since it is over different years, the numbers are increasing. That's the reason when the time horizon that we are comparing to alternative with each other are different, you must do EUAC. Because if you see, if you just use PV, it is not revealing. Of course, more years you keep it, you are gonna pay more. Present value of the costs are higher. So that's the reason we need now to convert this PV to EUAC. But before we do that, first of all, if you have already achieved this number, that's great. Otherwise, no worries. Now we go and check the details in an Excel file to see how we get these numbers. To calculate the NPV of, to calculate the PV of costs, the best formula is NPV. So we start NPV for year 1. NPV rate 15%, and the only value that we have for cost when we are about to use the car only for 1 year, just it is this the value. That's it. We continue. If for year 2, NPV of rate 15%, and the value we will have if we are supposed to keep the machine for 2 years are cost for year 1 and year 2. As you can see, I have selected both of them. We continue like this, and as another example, I show you for year 4. And as you can see, the same story. Net present worth of this 4 years costs, and you get the results here. As the next part that we have for this example, calculate EUAC of this cost that you get, and as you can see, they are here not comparable. So we have to calculate EUAC for them. Stop the video and calculate EUAC before I show you the answer shortly. EUAC of the costs are here, and when we look at them from year 1 to 2 decreasing, year 2 to 3 decreasing, but from year 3 to 4 it is increasing, and 4 to 5 the same pattern. Details of calculation in an Excel file for getting EUAC of the costs. We use PMT. For rate 15%, number of period, this column, so I have selected that cell 4, and here it is 1. And for the present value, we use the values we have already calculated in column F, as you can see. So I got it. As on another one, we go for year 3, and we have 15% for the rate, number of period, here is 3. I have selected the cell for that, and for the present value, here in this part of the function formula, you put the value you calculated in the previous step. So at this point, we have all the EUAC of the cost calculation, as you can see. Please don't overcomplicate the problem. We are just doing step by step. The next step is calculation of EUAC of the capital and salvage values that we have. Capital is a cost, salvage is an income. To show it to you, see, here in this case, let's go for year 3. Okay, if you want to keep your machine for 3 years, that's what is happening. Year 1, 2, and 3, and here 0. You are paying $20,000 for your machine now. After 3 years, you are gonna sell it for $17,000. So here we have 20,000, and here we have 17,000. What you want to do now, you want to calculate the EUAC for this cash flow. And remember, you have already done many exercises on how to convert something like this to an EUAC. So what we want to do here is that we convert such a thing to such a thing. It's gonna be something like this. You did the same for the costs. You are gonna do this conversion to EUAC for the capital and salvage value. So after that, you can calculate the total EUAC. What's the point of calculating the total EUAC? Because you want to find the minimum EUAC. The minimum EUAC is needed to find the minimum cost life that we are going to use in comparing Defender with the Challenger. Okay, now take your time and add the next column, that is EUAC of the salvage values according to different years of using that machine. And remember, when you are doing the calculations, because you are wanting to get payments, pay attention with just correct use of present value and future value, you can get the answer. Good luck. We are now enriching our table step by step. And here is the answer. EUAC of capital costs, as you can see, constantly decreasing. For year 1, we use payment, rate is 15%, number of period 1, present value. Present value is the costs of the machine now, that is $20,000. And the future value is the value of the machine at the end of that period, because here in this case we are supposed to keep the machine for 1 year. So we put the value at the beginning now and at the end of this year. For another example, let's go for year 4. In this case, we want to keep the machine for 4 years. When you want to keep the machine for 4 years, the value of machine now is $20,000. It is the value of machine now. And you can sell the machine at the end of year 4 at the value of $16,000. So these are the EUAC of the capital costs that we got. The last step in this example is calculating the total EUAC. The total EUAC would be summation of these two columns. And here we get the total EUAC. And you can see the total EUAC for year 1 is 16,000, year 2, 15, 14. You see, still it gets smaller and smaller. But at year 4, it starts increasing. So what is the minimum EUAC? 14,618. So the minimum cost life for Defender is 3. It means that we should compare this number with the Challenger's minimum EUAC. Please remember, you have already done everything. We didn't apply any new formula or function. We have already done all the things before, and now we are using it in a big example, in a big problem. And absolutely, if you feel confused about the things we discussed, just start the videos from the beginning, this session. Just start and try to do the example again on your system. Practice makes perfection. And still we are not done with the example. Now we just calculated minimum cost life. What would be your recommendation if Challenger EUAC is equal $15,030? Before you start working on this question on your own, let me clarify some points. You know that for doing this example, you should use technique 2. Technique 1 doesn't work here. Why? I'm going to show that part to you. In technique 1, it says that go and compare marginal costs with EUAC. Marginal cost is for the defender and EUAC is for the challenger. Okay, if we want to do that and we go for marginal cost of defender that you can see here in this column, and we know that the EUAC of the challenger is $15,030. So I go with marginal cost and it is 16,000, and 16,000 is greater than $15,030. So I'm going to say replace according to technique 1. That is not correct. And the fact that we are getting wrong answer from technique 1 is not surprising, because in technique 1 it is use it if marginal cost is rising, and it is not rising. So don't use technique 1 here. Here you should use technique 2. And now, according to all this data and everything you have, please start using technique 2 to answer this question. Good luck. Finally, we got to the end of this example, and I have put these answers also for you, for your reference. And the answer would be replace defender at the start of year 4. Why? Because defenders increasing marginal cost from year 4. Why it is increasing marginal cost? Because year 3 marginal cost was about 13,000 and now it is 15,000 in year 4. So since the marginal cost is now rising, we can use technique 1. For technique 1, we start checking with year 4. Is the marginal cost at year 4 for defender greater than challenger EUAC? Yes, it is. Defender marginal cost is 15,300 and the challenger EUAC is $15,030. So do the replacement at the beginning of year 4. At the beginning of year 4, we don't want to use defender anymore because it costs us 15,300 per year. But if we use the challenger, it costs us $15,030. So we go with the replacement.